Hi there, I am back with part 2 of my pilot show. In the first episode, I prefaced our shared existential circumstance, the inevitable hardships and crises that we face as humans, and the danger of accepting the given social narrative as the absolute truth and turning an eye on our existential conversation. I also shared that when we allow ourselves to become consumed by the material world, a man-made world that is superimposed on top of the natural and spiritual world, that we forgo our own innate sense, our internal guidance system, our ability to think and decide for ourselves, and thus we misinterpret life's experiences and we create more problems and detours. We too easily externalize our problems, which leads us to externalize our solutions. And in this process, we drum up more pain and suffering and crisis. And the worst part of this is that we are failing to discover and cultivate the journey of our true selves. Which brings us to today's video. The true self is a term I use often. It is a neutral terminology that I use in reference to ourselves as we explore our human experience. But it is up to each person to define what this means for themselves. In general, the true self speaks to our origin, where we came from, our essence, what we are made of, our purpose, why we are here, and our abilities, what we are capable of. While there are many things that science and spirituality can agree upon here, there are also many theories, beliefs, and assumptions that we each carry. So we must decide for ourselves, what does it mean to be true to ourselves, or find the path of our true self, or fulfill the mission of our true self. Continuing from last episode's pilot, in this video, I will speak more about the existential circumstance, our conditioned engagement response to our existential circumstance, and the emergence of the true self. In other words, how do we unplug from the matrix, so to speak, and reclaim our true essence? We all wake up here, discover the conditions for life, and without realizing it, we follow the conditioned response patterns modeled to us, and we see where that gets us. Based on modern society today, and the programming of our consciousness and physical bodies, we tend to run into a lot of hardships and struggles throughout life. But as these issues begin to hit an extreme, something causes or invites us to awaken and reevaluate what our lives mean and what our lives serve. And in this process, the opportunity to discover the greater purpose, potential, and capabilities of our human experience presents itself. So, as an overview, let's explore this. I'm going to speak from my point of view, but I encourage you to think through each point on your own and then share on the discussion board what you see. I will cover 3 main points and 3 main subpoints. Turning to the first point, our existential circumstance. Once we are born, we all face the same existential circumstance that could be broken down in many different ways. Speaking more generally, I'd say this circumstance includes the nature of life and death, the reality of the physical body and material world, and the mystery of it all. Starting with the first point, the nature of life and death speaks to our mortality and the cycle of birthing, developing, maturing, aging, and dying, as well as the cycles of gain and loss, pain and recovery, creation and destruction, and cause and effect that we all experience throughout our lives. Everyone faces the nature of life and death, and the cycles of life that swing us like a pendulum amid the dualistic reality that we find ourselves. This means that if we want to survive, we have to participate in the human experience. And the degree to which we participate influences the course of our lives and to what degree we thrive. The second aspect of our existential experience is the reality of the physical body and the material world that we are confined. No matter how many states of consciousness we might travel, we keep waking up in this body and in this material world here on Earth. This is a circumstance of life we all face, the restrictions of our physicality and materiality. To discover the strength, ability, and power of the physical body, we have to nourish and care for the body. And we also have to adapt to the demands and responsibilities of our social material world. Hence, there are conditions for being alive here. So again, we must participate in the human experience or we will suffer and die. Suffering is what motivates our participation. If we don't eat, then we will starve. If we don't sleep, then we will become deprived. If we don't get along with others, well then we will become lonely and fail to develop skills and abilities to function. These conditions include satisfying our needs, evading threats and danger, meeting personal and social security responsibilities, enduring hardships and adversity, resolving problems and conflicts, developing skills and abilities, and finding meaning and purpose in it all. And each time that we stabilize and balance out in one area of need, then we level up to a higher level of needs and skills to master. And at each level, if we do not participate, then we suffer. We suffer within ourselves or we suffer within our tribe. For example, once we achieve our basic survival and comfort, next comes livelihood and security, and then maybe health and fitness, and then maybe connection and collaboration of bigger projects, and so on. If we drop out at any time, there are consequences, such as your resources stop, your body hungers or aches, others get upset with you, or you feel depressed and unfulfilled. The third aspect of our existential experience is the mystery of it all. We are essentially born new or born anew with amnesia, and no one can say with absolute proof why we are here, what our purpose is, what it all means, and what we are to do with our time. We exist in this mind-boggler mystery. We are driven to survive, develop, connect, learn, create, and cultivate things into our lives and wisdom within ourselves. But we are living in a quandary on instinct, gratification, and faith. Regardless of what we put our beliefs into, nothing here on earth is reporting the absolute truth of the cosmos. Because as I understand it, the truth cannot even be put into human language, and no scientific instrument has reached its final conclusion on our existence. So this is just an intro discussion into our human circumstance. In sum, we all face the nature of life and death. We all are confined by our physical bodies in the material world. We all have conditions for being alive. We all face suffering when we stop participating in life's duties and demands, or when we turn our backs on our true selves and what is good and wholesome and in service to the collective. And we all share in the mystery of it all. The existential circumstance is that we must participate in the human experience, tending to all aspects of ourselves and tending to the needs of the world around us, or else we will suffer, or we will bring suffering upon others, and then we will die without having discovered our truth and fulfilling our mission. So I just spoke about our human circumstance and the nature of the field of life that we exist. Moving now to the second main topic of our video, our conditioned engagement response to our existential circumstance. That is, how are we showing up to this existential circumstance? And how much of that has been conditioned upon us? From what I see, the way we respond to life is molded by our social environment, shaped by our experiences, and conditioned by society. Starting with the first point, molded by our social environment. Yes, we each have our own unique predisposition, temperament, and personality traits. And in addition, as children and adults, we also model after others and the shared narrative for life within our social cultural environment. Or we respond in contrast to the given narrative. But either way, we are molded by our environment. For example, while at some points in history, humans were more collaborative, putting others first and operating in the best interest of the community, one could say that now we've moved toward a model that puts self over others, perhaps associated with the famous sayings, "to each his own," or survival of the fittest. And perhaps both are a tendency that we have cycled back and forth between throughout generations. As the social environmental landscape changes, the people of that society's response to life changes. For instance, cultures that are more in touch with nature and natural ways of living will respond to life differently than those who are anchored in a culture centered on technological advancement. This is because the perception of human problems and crisis is understood through a different lens. Hence, the response and proposed solution to problems will be different. To a high degree, people respond to life circumstances the way that people around them respond. Turning now to the second point, we are shaped by our experiences. The way we respond to our existential circumstances are also shaped by our experiences. As humans, we learn through trial and error, and observation and personal experience. Through the outcome of each experience, we establish our likes and dislikes, what is safe and unsafe, what was helpful and unhelpful, and what worked and didn't work. For the most part, our decision-making is refined through practical analysis. However, sometimes our decision-making and response patterns are developed through fearful or traumatic events, where we witnessed or experienced pain and suffering, abuse and violence, or even things like abandonment, rejection, or humiliation. We learn how to respond to the circumstances of life in such a way so as to avoid or alleviate suffering, or to create more of a sense of security, belongingness, and happiness. So our material world experiences influence our response to our existential circumstance. We have much more of a tendency to act in favor of immediate gains and gratification than we do to delay gratification for a higher truth or a bigger reward down the road. Turning to the third point, we are conditioned by society. The way we respond to our existential circumstance is most definitely conditioned by the social systems and information channels within our society. Mainstream society consists of social norms and standards, mass media and entertainment, science and education, church and charity, healthcare, commerce, and so on. Society is manufactured to meet the needs of the majority, to develop a system of law and order and freedom and choice where everyone can work together. And due to the progressive nature of humans, society is always working toward bigger and better results through automation, efficiency, productivity, sustainability, and so on. Even with good intentions, the tendency to form private interest, move toward fame and status, seek immediate gains, exert power and control over others, and leverage and take advantage of others to achieve a goal seems inevitable. In society, narratives form within each industry, filtering down through each system, programming human consciousness and conditioning human behavior. Every aspect of society is based on a narrative of what life is about and what we are to do with our time throughout life. Just taking a look, we can see that, say, Big Pharma promotes the narrative of disease and illness and the essential need for medications. Private prisons promote the narrative of criminal behavior and the need for punishment. Universities promote prestigious career paths and the need to spend outrageously to be properly educated. The entertainment industry promotes the narrative that life is all about having fun, coupled with the alcohol industry suggesting that fun entails letting go of all worries and drinking the day away, which is worth all the bad decisions and consequences. Eventually, all of the mainstream channels in society become weaved together, creating a social narrative that dictates our mental, emotional, and social behavioral landscapes. Without even realizing it, we adopt these narratives as beliefs, such as happiness comes from the pursuit of it, buying and accumulating stuff is good, suffering is bad and should be alleviated at any cost, easier and bigger is better, outsourcing skills to reduce work is smarter, and problems and solutions exist outside of ourselves. And thus, when we are faced with our existential circumstance and the conditions for being alive, we meet these challenges and hardships and we satisfy these desires and pursuits according to the social narratives that have been conditioned upon us. And as I mentioned, we do this without stopping to ask ourselves, what do I believe? What is true for me? And what will become of my decisions here? In summary, as we can see, our conditioned engagement response to life is heavily influenced by the social, cultural, environmental context in which we are raised and exist now, by our experiences and how they have shaped us, and through the conditioning of society. Now, sometimes these experiences can push us on track and cross into alignment with our true selves. But all of these factors can also divert us from our true nature. And that is the real issue. We have been diverted from the existential conversation, from thinking for ourselves, and from taking the time to authenticate what is true for us as individuals, families, and communities. We are making decisions based on perspectives and desires that were conditioned into us. This causes us to ignore or misinterpret our existential circumstance and prevents the exploration of our grander existential purpose. And in this gap between the true self and the material world persona, symptoms, problems, and crises multiply. Now, for the last part of this video, let's discuss the emergence of the true self. Because all these crises we face are not all bad. In fact, because it was set up from the beginning to lose ourselves in the material world, it is often crisis that motivates the return back to our true self. It is not until the pain and suffering, the confusion and chaos, or the stagnation and destruction become so immense, whereby the attractions, distractions, and gratifications of the material world cannot cover things up anymore, that we finally stop to have the existential conversation about what it all means and what our life serves. So, jumping into the final topic now, the emergence of the true self. In future videos, I will be talking a lot about the emergence of the true self, for this is a process of emerging out of any kind of addiction, mental or physical suffering, or the relentless pursuit or agony in life. This is the secret to success right here, and this is the heart of this series. As we allow ourselves to enter the existential conversation and get raw and real within ourselves about what our life means and what our life serves, we have already begun this journey. Now, as I see it, this is a journey of personal awakening, activating your life mission, and cultivating your power. Turning to the first point, personal awakening. A personal awakening has been defined in many different ways for people. It is commonly associated with a spiritual awakening, such as the realization of God or divine realms, the discovery of soul and spirit, or simply the recognition of spiritual worlds and all the angels and beings believed to exist beyond this physical world. For others, a personal awakening is associated with finding one's personal power and free will to create positive changes in the here and now, such as discovering the power of one's thoughts, or the power of one's heart nature, or the power of one's lifestyle and actions. For others, a personal awakening relates more to the natural world, the recognition that all things are connected, and the cause and effect relationship between all things. And yet, for others, a personal awakening might entail discovering the hidden truths right here in this world. Now, you might hear people talking about waking up or waking everyone else up, and I think that this is a good thing to do. But it is important that each person has the space to define for themselves what it means to wake up. People are capable of experiencing insights and aha moments on a daily basis. The concept of awakening is not necessarily defined by one moment in time. It is a process of peeling back the layers of distortion, conditioning, and deception that veils human consciousness, and also a process of discovering one's own truth, power, and wisdom. There are gobs and gobs of unresolved matter layered deep inside the minds and bodies of everyone that obstruct our energy flows, consciousness, and abilities. and there are gobs and gobs of falsity, trauma, karma, and chaos layered in the material world just the same. The first major awakening that people reference is the discovery of an overarching reality of life that wasn't formerly noticed, that at a glance completely reconfigures their view of themselves, others, and this life, with a knowing that a new journey has only just begun. It is like looking down a rabbit hole. You realize there was a bigger reality surrounding everything you formerly held as true, but that it is going to take a long time to explore and understand what you've just discovered. This experience of first awakening is also typically accompanied with the realization that life itself is a constant journey of revelation and learning. That what we've been told and what we know now is only a very small part of what we could come to know, and that to attain a life of peace, harmony, and fulfillment does not come from our external pursuits and achievements, but rather that true success in life is about the inner transformational journey, a journey that requires ongoing personal work. But as I said, the experience of awakening is different for everyone and can be understood by different people in different ways. Next to mention, in regards to the emergence of the true self, is activating your life mission. Following a personal awakening of higher truth and greater power and ability, typically comes curiosity and inquiry into one's greater purpose and mission in this life, speaking specifically to one's material world mission. When a person's worldview changes, their role in this life and their way of being comes into question as well. This too can be defined in different ways. For some people, activating their life mission is bringing more clarity, intention, skillfulness, and diligence into one's current job or career, or activities and vocation. For other people, this means entertaining the possibility of a new career path or life mission. Last to mention on the topic of the emergence of the true self is cultivating your power. Following a personal awakening, people are definitely called to step up their game. This could refer to self-improvement, self-care, self-healing, self-growth, self-mastery, and/or self-actualization. A personal awakening can be highly motivating, but also more demanding of oneself. Raising consciousness goes hand in hand with elevating one's vibration and character and improving one's daily habits. I will speak to this a lot more in videos to come. So there you have it. In summary, we have our shared existential circumstance and our conditions for being alive. And then we have our conditioned engagement response to our existential circumstance and the effect of our conditioned response, which in an unconscious and unchecked state ends up creating more pain and suffering and chaos. However, there is a blessing and opportunity when things hit an extreme, which is often referred to as motivational crisis. The moment in life when things become so unmanageable that the need for change cannot be ignored. It is then that an opportunity arises for us to look inward and begin the journey of our true self. Alright, that concludes part 2 of my pilot series. Thank you for watching.